Hello and welcome back. Today we are working on this two-tone Rolex Datejust. As you can see, the dial is missing. The client initially was looking at having a dial restoration, so a previous watchmaker had removed the dial, but he has since decided to keep the original, and you will see that later on in the video. So as I'm stripping down this watch, I know it's been about 18 months or just over since my last upload. I have since taken a position in London, which has obviously taken up a lot of my time and focus, but the goal was always to come back to YouTube. Some of you may have seen me live or even seen some of my YouTube shorts, but this is going to be my first actual video. So yeah, thank you all for joining, and I hope to upload a lot more in the future. So the movement has now been taken out of the case. Removing the hands was a little bit more troublesome than usual because there's no dial to act as leverage against, but with the hands off we can remove the date disc and then loosen the screws and remove the seating for the date indicator. This will give us better access to the rapid date function, and we can then loosen the calendar wheel nut, move aside the cam yoke so that we can extract the date wheel, and not to forget the jewel that is attached to the cam yoke. Remove the hour wheel and the cannon pinion, and we can turn the watch over and remove the balance. With the balance removed, and there's now no risk to it being damaged, we'll then cut the power. To ensure there is no power at all, we'll then remove the ratchet wheel and the crown wheel. So now we know there is no power being held within the movement. We can then remove the intermediate crown wheel and wigwag pinion, and then move on to the pallets. And as I'm stripping down both the train gearing and the barrel bridge, I'll go into a little bit of history of this watch. This is the Rolex caliber 3035, produced between 1977 and 1988. So this was the predecessor to the 3135. What was taken out there was the minute pinion, and that is what the cannon sits on. And we'll flip them, move them back over so that we can remove the keyless, being careful not to lose the yoke spring, and then remove the setting lever. Nothing is then holding the stem in place, so that just slides out. Next we can remove the balance jewels. I then go around and give the jewels a bit of a pre-clean with a sharpened piece of pegwood. Before I put this in the machine, I will then extract both of the balance jewels, both from the base plate and the balance cock. And then start to strip down the barrel. And I will push the barrel arbor straight through the barrel closing cap tool, and very carefully extract the mainspring. The last part to disassemble is the automatic. The rotor is held on with a tiny little C-clip, and the rotor will then just come off. 3 screws hold down the top plate, and we'll then remove the reversers and the driving wheel. And again, we'll give the jewels a bit of a pre-clean before we put them into the machine. And here I am just putting all the components into a basket before going into the cleaning machine. Whilst that's cleaning, we'll then strip down the case. So we'll remove the bezel, which will then allow us to take out the glass and also see the state of the original case back gasket. It has dried up and cracked. That will be cleaned in an ultrasonic tank. There are tools to remove bezels, but sadly with my little setup at home I don't have that particular tool, so a knife and hammer will have to do. When it comes to reassembly, I'll start with the keyless. Be sure to put your stop piece in before the setting lever, otherwise you'll have to strip this all down again to fit it. Then we'll fit the yoke and the setting wheel, and very carefully fit the yoke spring. I use my finger just to hold it down to prevent it from pinging out. We'll then fit the setting lever spring, and we will grease any areas where metal is grinding on metal, and a little test to make sure that it pulls out properly. Moving on to the barrel, we'll grease the walls and also put some grease on the base of the barrel before winding this in by hand. Now obviously there are mainspring winders that will do the job probably just as easy or easier, but for mainsprings of this size or barrels of this size, I've had no problem just winding them back in by hand. We then grease the barrel arbor before fitting it, and then grease the barrel cap before pressing down and hearing a click. Before we fit the barrel, we want to make sure all of the bearings are greased, and I'll also put a little bit more grease on the barrel arbor before fitting the barrel bridge. We'll get that screwed down, and then again apply some grease before fitting our minute pinion and the minute pinion bridge. With that secured, I'll then put some oil in place for our escape wheel before fitting the remaining wheels of the train. I had a little bit of trouble getting the third wheel in with the pivots, but eventually we got them lined up. And again, we're going to put some oil in the jewel for the escape wheel within the train bridge before fitting it to the base plate. With all the pivots aligned, you can see power is going through the train. Get that screwed down, and we can then grease and fit the crown wheel. With the crown wheel in place, we can then grease and fit the intermediate crown wheel as well as the wig-wag pinion. Make sure that is secured down, and then fit the ratchet wheel. And with a few winds, you can see power going through the train, and we want to make sure power goes through nice and smooth, so we are going to oil all of the jewels, both top side and bottom, before fitting our pallets. It's hard to see from this angle, but I am oiling the pallet jewels here. So once the pallets have been oiled, I will then fit the balance. The two jewels then need to be oiled for the balance. It's very hard to see, but it is a very delicate operation. We'll get those in place, and you will then see the watch spring into life. You'll see the recordings and timekeeping at the end of the video once it's cased up. So we'll then flip it over, fit our cannon pinion. We have to remove our setting lever spring in order to fit the minute wheel, but once our minute wheel is in place, we can then put our setting lever spring back, fit the hour wheel, and then very carefully refit our cam yoke, the jewel, the calendar wheel, and then fit our calendar wheel nut. Reassemble our rapid date function. And then place our seating for the date indicator. We'll then secure that down with the two screws and place a very light amount of oil to help the date disc go around nice and smooth. Secure the date disc in place, loosen the two dial feet screws. Here is the original dial. As you can see, there is some discoloration where the paint's fading and you can start to see the base metal, but we'll fit it, secure it, and just make sure there's no debris on the movement. Turn the hands around until the date changes, and then we'll fit the hour hand at 12. Once I'm happy with how the hour hand is set, I will then fit the minute hand. And then finally, the seconds hand. We can then extract the stem, and with our now clean case, fit the movement. I'll then lubricate the tube before fitting the stem. And now I can fit the glass knowing that the Cyclops is lined up properly. I'll then secure the movement before moving on to the automatic. I rest the automatic plate on a stake so that there is a void for the driving wheel pinion. Fit both the reverses and then screw down the top plate. Place some oil on the rotor axle and clip that into place with the little C-clip. And then fit the pinion for the oscillating weight, making sure to oil all of the jewels, and then fitting the automatic to the movement. And once the automatic is engaging, I will then screw down and secure the bridge, and you'll then see the gears turning, and then oil all of the top jewels for the automatic. We'll then fit a new gasket, press down the bezel, and then fit the new NATO strap. And there you have it. I'll also show you the readings on the timing machine. But all in all, this is a very nice watch. I actually quite like it on this particular NATO. It goes very nice with the colour of the dial. But thank you all for watching, and I will hopefully see you again very soon.